All right, on today's vlog, we're going to talk about mistakes that new Harley riders make. What's up, guys? Chef here at Riding Free Nation. We're going to do something a little different today. Not normally used to be inside the garage instead of on the motorcycle, but we are going to do some things and mix up some content here at the channel. Also, we just did a video on new to Harley and why you should pick a Harley Davidson and some considerations in making that purchase. It's a great video. This is part 2 of that video and the mistakes that people would make. Number 1 on that list is going to be picking the wrong motorcycle. And that is such an important thing. That's why I made that video and trying to help y'all decide what the right motorcycle is and going and getting fitted for the motorcycle itself. Now, a lot of people would pick a motorcycle because their friends have it, but I truly and genuinely believe that there is a series of questions that you need to answer to be able to pick the right motorcycle, and not picking the right motorcycle is going to end up leading to problems down the road. You're not going to be happy with the motorcycle. You're going to want to end up trading that motorcycle in, and in the end result, it's going to cost you a lot more money to do so. You got to think about what your purpose of riding is, and a lot of people will pick the wrong motorcycle and buy something that doesn't work for what their riding style is. So let's say if you were to buy a Sportster and your whole goal is to do some long distance touring, you can alter the Sportster to be able to do some long distance touring, but it's not a touring motorcycle. You're just not going to be really comfortable with it. If you buy that Sportster and you're riding with a group doing some long distance touring, you're going to have some issues with trying to keep up, and it's just going to be the wrong motorcycle for what you want. A lot of people, when they end up purchasing the wrong motorcycle, they're purchasing strictly based on budget. Now, budget is a huge concern. Don't get me wrong in that aspect. Everybody has a budget and everything that you're going to end up buying. However, if you're just strictly budget shopping for a motorcycle, I will tell you, you get what you pay for. Okay, I would always suggest that you buy the motorcycle that you really want. If you're making such a big financial commitment, pick the right motorcycle from the get-go and you'll be much happier with your riding experience. One of the other things that people don't consider when buying a motorcycle and ends up being a mistake is the dynamics of the motorcycle are wrong for them. What I mean by that is the motorcycle is too heavy. People underestimate the weight of a Harley Davidson motorcycle. Even if you're a rider who's been riding metric bikes or sport bikes for a period of time and you come to Harley, a lot of people are honestly shocked simply because the weight of a Harley Davidson motorcycle is much heavier. It is a more beefy, well-built motorcycle. It's a piece of American steel. The dynamics of the motorcycle, the center of gravity of the motorcycle, how the frame is, everything is important in the weight of the motorcycle. So a lot of people underestimate the weight when they purchase the motorcycle, which is why it's important to go in the dealership and interact with the motorcycle and pick one that is right for you. A lot of people will underestimate the power of the motorcycle, especially guys. We are guilty of it just simply because we're guys. We're all alpha male. We want as much power as we can. The problem is a lot of people underestimate the power. A lot of people are used to or familiar with the power of a sport bike having just an extreme amount of power just at a very small twist of the wrist. And when they go to Harley, they think, well, it's a big motorcycle. It's slow. It's not going to have the amount of power, and they're wrong. Especially with the newer technology, when you have electric throttle or throttle by wire, the responsiveness of that throttle is just absolutely amazing. It's very, very quick. It's all electronic based. It's not like the old style cables where the cable has to interact with the motor and it takes just a second. So the power of the motorcycle becomes a concern for some people. Don't be one of those people that underestimate the power of the motorcycle. A very important thing, I think, when you pick the right motorcycle and not making a mistake is going to the dealership and doing some demo rides. Get a good feel for the motorcycle, get a good feel for how much power the motorcycle really has, and that way you'll have a better understanding of that. A lot of people underestimate the handling of a Harley Davidson motorcycle, and I think that is part of the importance of going to the dealership and doing a demo ride, is so that you feel the handling. Even though they're really big motorcycles, they handle exceptionally well. Especially the touring line of motorcycles, I think, have the best handling and the best balance and counterbalance out of all of the different motorcycles that Harley Davidson makes. Now, handling on anything from a Sportster on the way up is set for that style of motorcycle. When you look at motorcycles like the Fat Boy or the Breakout that have a different front end style, maybe a little more rake, a little bigger rear tire, they're going to handle a little bit differently, but the handling of the motorcycle becomes important. A lot of people will underestimate that handling and figure it's a big motorcycle and you really got to throw it around. And the fact of the matter is you don't have to throw that motorcycle around. You just have to understand how that motorcycle handles and be able to manipulate the motorcycle as needed. One of the biggest things that I think people underestimate in buying a Harley Davidson is underestimating their budget. And I will tell you this from my personal experience and working in the Harley industry, the motorcycle is the cheap part. It's all the other stuff that you're going to do afterwards that becomes expensive. That's why it's important that you make the right motorcycle purchase the first time, and then you have an idea of how to accessorize that motorcycle. Always going to be something that you're going to want to do to improve the motorcycle. You know, a lot of people will change out the exhaust, handlebars, seat, all sorts of different cosmetic features. That is all part of the consideration you need to have when purchasing a motorcycle. You know, a lot of customers will walk into a Harley Davidson dealership and be like, wow, I can go buy a metric bike for $5,000 or $6,000. Correct. It's not a Harley Davidson motorcycle. You are getting something completely different when you're buying a Harley Davidson motorcycle. Harley Davidson nowadays is considered an elite or a premium line item in the motorcycle world. So you have to understand, when our motor company has 58% of the world's market share in motorcycles, there's some value there and you're going to pay extra to get a Harley Davidson motorcycle. That has to be a consideration, or ends up being a mistake when people underestimate their budget when purchasing the motorcycle. Now, next thing on the list, this one people are guilty of, and it happens all the time, is they develop the bad boy attitude when they purchase a Harley Davidson motorcycle. And why not? You purchase the American badass piece of iron that is very historic and iconic in the motorcycle world, and man, it just creates this stigma and this feeling inside of you, and a lot of people don't know how to handle that. I will tell you, very important, especially when you're a new rider, and how to conduct yourself properly on your motorcycle. A lot of people will end up going out and they engage in drinking, and that creates problems because it's different than being in a car. Your motorcycle leans. The alcohol alters your mentation, it alters your equilibrium. Look at law enforcement. They do standard field sobriety tests to make a determination whether you're safe to drive or not. And that's strictly based on standing still and looking at your points of equilibrium. So when you're drinking, a lot of people don't think about the fact that they're going to be getting on something that leans from side to side, that alters your ability to handle and process in your brain. A lot of people develop that bad boy attitude too when they go out drinking and they ride their Harley Davidson motorcycle. Fighting is also a common side effect of that bad boy attitude. And that's definitely a mistake a lot of people make. I mean, I've seen it time again where people decide that they want to go out and they want to ride their motorcycle and they want to be a badass. You got to be careful about where you're going, what you're doing, and how you conduct yourself when you're out there. How you conduct yourself becomes important to the rest of us in the motorcycle community simply because you are out there representing everybody who rides as well. We don't want to get a bad name because people go out there and cause trouble. Years ago, this type of behavior is what phrased the term one percenter when it came to motorcycle clubs. The American Motorcycle Association addressed the issue when people were concerned about guys riding motorcycles and causing mischief in towns. And the American Motorcycle Association said, hey, 99% of people who are out there riding motorcycles are law-abiding citizens. It is the 1% out there that are the other type of people who engage in mischievous activity. And obviously, the motorcycle clubs picked up on that and now use that as a term proudly because they are the other 1% of people out there who engage in that behavior. All right, next thing on the list is riding beyond your limitations. And I know this one seems very simplistic, but a lot of times people end up having problems with this. They go out, they purchase a Harley Davidson motorcycle, they find some friends to ride with, they're super stoked about going out and riding, and they're going out hitting some roads. And a lot of times you get new riders who can't keep up with their friends. They push their limits, ride beyond their limitations, and end up finding themselves in trouble. Learn your motorcycle. Spend some time riding and learning what your limitations are. When you go out riding with a group of people, don't ride beyond those limitations and you're always going to be okay. Know where your friends are going to go. If you got to meet up with them and you're a few minutes after them, it's not a big deal. but don't ride beyond your limitations. It's gonna end up getting you in trouble, and I don't wanna see you get hurt because you ride beyond what your normal limitations are. Next thing on the list is a lot of people don't pay attention to the weather, and I know that seems kind of asinine, if you will. I own a Harley Davidson motorcycle. The weather app is on the front page of my phone. I check it all the time because it's important, but there will be those times where I'm just as guilty as an experienced rider as new people do, and I don't pay attention to the weather or underestimate the weather. Think about it. You're out riding in the daytime, it's beautiful, it's sunny, it's 85 degrees. You go out with some friends, you have some dinner, you come out from dinner, and it's now 50 or 60 degrees. Did you bring a jacket? Did you bring gloves? All of those things are important simply because the more comfortable you are with riding, the more stable your riding is going to be, and your experience is going to be that much more enjoyable. I don't like riding when it's super cold or when I get super cold. That's why you have to prepare ahead of time. I always keep a couple of extra pairs of gloves in the motorcycle for different weather conditions. I always make sure that I have, an extra flannel shirt or an extra jacket in the motorcycle. That way, if the weather changes, I am prepared for that weather change and I can still enjoy my ride. Next thing on the list when new riders are making mistakes is not adequately planning for long distance trips. You made the decision to buy you a motorcycle, you got some riding experience, now you're ready for your first trip. You made the plan of where you're going to go, and the destination always is important. However, what is your route to get there? Are you aware of where you're going? You always got to look at your weather conditions, and you got to think about things that are beyond your control. So, when you look at planning for a long distance trip, are you going to need rain gear? Are you going to need multiple layers of clothing? Are you going into the mountains? Are you going somewhere where it is warmer? Always make sure you think about other things in your long distance travels. One of the big things with that long distance travel, and I think a lot of riders make mistakes, is underestimating the amount of time that it's going to take you to get from point A to point B. Have you ever found yourself on a trip and you're like, hey, I only got 150 more miles to go, and you've underestimated the amount of time, and now you're riding at dark? Always a concern, so know what your distance is and the time that it's going to take to travel that distance. As a rule of thumb, and I always make the recommendation, I always plan for at least 1.5 times the trip time when I'm on the motorcycle compared to when I'm traveling in a car. That way I have time for fuel, that way I have time for stretching, get up and walk around, move around a little bit when you do make your stops, because you're going to need it if you're traveling a long distance. Sometimes when you're doing 500, 600, 700 miles in a day, that extra 10 or 15 minutes when you stop to get some fuel and some food is super important to walk around and stretch and exercise your joints, because you're going to get a little stiff when you're riding a long distance. You got to be careful when you're traveling, and you got to think about your fuel. If you're not used to where you're going, you've never been there before, be aware of fuel stops. It is inevitable you're going to be out finding some really cool places to go. You may be in a desolate area, and fuel just simply may not be available. Think about fuel stops in part of your ride planning and plotting out how far you plan to go. When in doubt, always stop, top your gas tank off. It is the safest option for you. If you talk to anybody who's been a biker for any period of time, I'm sure they probably have a really funny story, which is funny now, but probably not funny at the time, of where they had issues with getting fuel. With the long distance travel stuff, one other consideration I want to throw into the mix is money. It's always going to be expensive when you travel. You're always going to be out having a good time. So if you're taking a long distance trip on a motorcycle, throw a little extra money into that trip. That way you can do the things that you want to do. Especially if you go to a bike week or a bike event, there's always going to be things that you want to do. And with that money consideration, always have the ability to stuff some money aside in case you have some kind of emergency repair, flat tire, or something like that that comes up along the way. All right, last thing on the list that I want to talk about, and mistakes that new Harley riders make, is not maintaining their motorcycle. If you haven't seen my serviceability video, I will put a link for that for you right up here. But servicing your motorcycle, super important. You're riding on top of the motor. There's no metal around you, so safety is always an important factor in riding your motorcycle. So make sure that you get it serviced. And the biggest thing that I would tell you with serviceability and being a new rider and considering everything when you're riding is check your tire pressure before you ride and make sure you're always checking your oil. Those are two things that are super easy to check and super easy to fix, and will prolong the longevity of your motorcycle and make your riding journey much more enjoyable. Guys, that'll do it for today's vlog. I appreciate you stopping by, whether you're a new viewer or returning viewer. I sincerely appreciate you spending some time here. Hope you enjoyed today's content. Please leave a comment down below, as well as hitting that like and subscribe button. Help this channel grow. We got a lot of great content coming out. Until next time, guys, ride safe, enjoy what you're doing, and don't forget to thank those that allow us to be out riding free. We'll see you soon.